Well, it's wonderful to meet you, Erica. I'm looking forward to getting into your work and what you do. But to begin that, I want to know about 4.5 years ago or so, we were dealing with this pandemic, and it really did make all of us kind of rearrange and reshape our realities. How much of living through that has influenced your work and the way that you do things now?
I would say that, I mean, I worked in the building industry. So, and I worked from home because my role was in sales, marketing, all of that. And really, my world, internal world, didn't really change. I mean, we certainly did manage things. At that time, I also was taking on project management stuff. And so for me, um, a huge part of it is risk management. So I now look ahead and go, what is the worst thing that could happen? And not that I didn't before, but when you start to see kind of the perfect storm of not being able to get the materials to move forward. So suddenly you go, okay, well, I don't have materials, which means my guys aren't working. And if
Yeah.
my guys aren't working, then the subs aren't working. And it's like this trickle down effect. And that happened for a lot of builders.
Yeah.
Whereas because I'm a little bit of a type A and I'm a
Yeah.
little retentive, I was like, what might I not be able to get? So we actually stocked up on most of the materials like 2x4s, electrical stuff, so that when we got to the point where we needed it, we had it and we didn't have to worry about it being a problem. And so I think I just, for me, you you just always have to worry about like the work isn't always going to come. And because we contractors and we went through this period of feast where money was cheap and work was plentiful, the reality of being in construction is it's feast or famine. And the pandemic was a huge, because if you couldn't get materials, you couldn't get them. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't even like, oh, I could pay more and get them. You literally just couldn't get them. So that I think I still carry over where it's like, yeah, that you're not going to be a week without work. You might be a month without work.
So I'm curious now that we've been away from that time period for a while. I know a lot of people that literally couldn't do projects because there was no materials. So my
Yep.
question to you, understanding the industry as much as you do, was this supply and demand issues where they were trying to withhold to raise prices, or was there literally no way that you could get anything?
So it, there was a bit of a perfect storm. So there was a bunch of things that happened in the industry that affected things. Uh, so in within sort of a 1 year period, uh, cheap material like MDF was really difficult to get because they had a freeze in Texas. And I don't know if most people know this, but most of the adhesives that go into MDF all come from Texas. And so now all of a sudden you can't produce MDF. So it's not even like you can get it. And then we had the issue with getting shipping containers in. So the cost of shipping containers went way up. So
Yeah.
now you have what used to be a cheap toilet, but the supplier isn't going to bring it in because that cheap toilet is now going to cost them $200-300 more for the shipping container to bring it in. So you just put it, so we
Yeah.
actually shifted a lot of our materials like tile and things to North American made because we couldn't get that stuff from overseas. And we'd never really thought about it before.
Yeah.
And then we also had lack of partners during this period of, because everybody is protesting. And so we had stuff in shipping containers at the port and we couldn't get it because there just weren't enough trucks to get the stuff there. So all of those things really lined up to make it so that materials, you literally just could not get it. And it wasn't about an arbitrary increase in price. It was simply the nature of, and yes, certainly people took advantage. A lot of people were buying spools of wire for twice what they could have because you just could not get it. So so it was a perfect storm, unfortunately for us. Everybody thought we were just, being jerks about it, but it's like, no. So we were okay. Our prices went up a little bit, but
Yeah.
we sort of looked ahead and made sure that we were good. So
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily
sure.
basis. And to do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids. It's grade school kids, it's career
Okay.
day, and the kid in the
Yeah.
back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do
Yep.
you answer him?
So I make online courses for people who work in the construction industry that teach them about how to run a business. Because as we get more and more trades, what I find is they learn the skill and they don't learn the business. And people who go into trades traditionally, your standard educational system where you sit in a classroom isn't really where they excel. That's
Yeah.
part of the reason why they work with their hands and they're in the trades. And so our courses are all video based. So if you can learn on YouTube, then you can learn from our courses. So we've intentionally designed it with videos. Yes, there's lots of complicated things, but we go to the very basics. We don't assume that you're making $1 million a year and that you want to grow your business. We assume that you put your foot on the ground and you know nothing, and we start from there. And we help you get what you need to make sure that you're running your business and actually making money. Like so many guys I know are such hardworking people and they're leaving money on the table because nobody ever taught them how to do the business part.
Yeah. So, what did you want to be in the third grade? When you were a kid, what was your ideal life?
Um, when I was in the third grade, I mean, I think I wanted to be a psychiatrist because none of my friends knew how to spell psychiatrist. Um, but in the end, I come from a family of my doctors on my mom's side, and my dad's an engineer, and so I think growing up, I always figured being good at math and science, I was going to go into some form of engineering.
So, what were ultimately the seeds that were planted into you that helped you evolve into this career that you have now? How did it all kind of begin and take root and become who you are today?
Well, I've been in and around construction for a long time. So that is really where my feet on the ground goes and where I have a connection with the people in this industry. But straight out of school, my degree is in chemical engineering, and I never did pure engineering work. My very first job out of school, I was in a group of people where we were allowed to explore multiple areas within the business. And it was identified that of this group of freshly born engineers, that of them, I was the only person that could work in marketing because most people and engineers don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
So I've always been that technical translator where I take complicated things and can convert them so that the audience understands what's at the core of what they do. And so I've kind of always done, I did some project management work, which is part of why, like, I understand how all of this stuff works. But the truth is, when my daughter was young, I moved to a small town. So, suddenly my big career that I had was put on the back burner. And interestingly, when you're in a small town, there's this thing called overeducated and too much experience. And so you can't get a job. So I bounced kind of from one thing to another, all either directly or indirectly in construction, again, small town. So I got an opportunity to look at the industry from a lot of different angles. Like I did a stint in HR. I worked for an industry association. I've done project managers. I actually stood behind the counter at a lumber store and sold screws and two by fours. So I kind of looked at it from everything. And I mean, I was married to a contractor for a long time, so I ran his business, but also understand, um, he's coming at it from a contractor brain and I'm coming at it from a business brain, and how it's really important. Had he known what I knew, one, our relationship probably would have been a lot better, but also, um, he would have made more money, right? At the end of the year would come and he'd make $20,000, which was less than he was paying the guy that was picking up the garbage. But he thought every job was a moneymaker because he didn't really understand how all of that stuff worked. So all of that experience kind of came together. And about a year ago, I was working at a builder doing business development. So everything customer facing, legal, sales, marketing, advertising, customer service, warranty work, like all of that stuff came into my team. And I just felt like, now what? Right. And it was a
Yeah.
lot. And I was investing a lot of myself in somebody else's vision. And I finally thought, this is the time where I'm going to make the leap. So I made the leap into consulting. And then I shook my head and said, how you get a population of people who have no time and have no money to come and learn what I need them to teach? And the answer to that is I bring it to them and I
Yeah.
make it accessible and inexpensive so that and fun. Because if you learn one thing from a 1 hour course, you'll carry that with you through your life.
Yeah.
But if you do 3 weeks and there's so much that you may or may not with anything because it's so much. And so what we do is we're like, we got 1 point every course. And if you take one or two things away, then you're going to carry that through. And it's changed how you manage your business.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Who's been an inspiration for you in your career? Who's been that person that's been a bedrock, that's been kind of a hero for you?
You know what? I'm gonna say probably my dad. So my dad is an engineer and uh super supportive of everything. He's taken all my courses, he's my beta tester. Um, Also in a lot of ways too, because part of like my social media and what we do, I take real examples from doing construction work around my house. And interestingly, even though he's an engineer and I'm an engineer, we don't communicate particularly well. And so it's constantly a reminder that starting making sure that you're communicating and you're on the same page with your customer is really, really important
Yeah.
because I kind of view myself as the contractor and him as the customer. And I'm like, well, if we're having these, so then I take those tips and I can bring them into just an example when I'm doing a course about communicating and what could have happened if you didn't ask the question up front and how you do it. Because the truth is that we love each other and care about each other. We drive each other crazy, which is, sometimes you have customers and you love them and they drive you crazy. So
Yeah. 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 I get it. So let me ask you this. In the world of business, who do you admire? Is there a business model that's out there that you admire? Maybe somebody in that world that you would love to meet and that might help you on your path?
oh, that's a big one. I think, to be honest, I really like Arlene Dickinson.
Yeah.
Um, and I think part of it is that I really appreciate her willingness to state her uh, political opinions. And I'm not that necessarily right or left, but most of the time when she does, it relates into how business functions. And she also very much pulled herself up by the bootstraps and is a self-made millionaire. So I mean, I think on the list that she would probably be top of my list.
Yeah. So, what is the motivator for you every day to wake up to do this work that you do? And not only that, but you got to evolve as a human being. So, what is it collectively every day for you to be who you are at the top of your game?
So I would say honestly, it's the guys. And I don't mean to be gendered in this way, but the reality is that 99.9% of the trades that I know that need my help are men. And I have sat with them and, had a beer and put my feet up and burned scraps of wood in the fire. And I listen to them talk, and most of them can't see their way to retirement. They're going to work until their body breaks. And it breaks my heart, to be perfectly honest with you, because these are creative, hardworking, loyal people. And I know in the back of my mind that if they just did a few things differently, they would sleep better at night. They would be able to be preparing their business for when they're going to retire. And they might be seeing their life a little bit differently. And so that's really why I do it because the stuff I bring to the table, I talk to really successful contractors and even they'll look at me and go, oh my gosh, I can make a ton more money when I start doing that. And it's rocket science. That's the thing. It's stuff they either were doing and stopped doing, or they forgot, or they are like, right, I can do that. And so it's not complicated to go from struggling to being successful
Yeah.
if you're willing to take the lesson and learn from that.
So, the one thing about making changes that will be beneficial to you in your life and career is that it requires a certain amount of risk. So, when you look at your career, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Well, I mean, I definitely think, my last sleep was it was a reset for me. I um was making more than I had for the first time. It took me 20 years to go from being a project manager, making good money, to now making the same kind of money that I was making before. Um, and so for the first time in a long time, because my career hasn't been easy. So I'm kind of finally getting where it was that I said I wanted to go, and then I walked away because I knew that I had, yeah, I had more to give, but I also felt like I had done what I needed to do. I helped build this business, put the systems in place, get everything all ready, and then it's like, so that was a big risk because ultimately, you go from making good money to making nothing.
Yeah.
And, everybody thinks, oh, everybody likes what I'm going to do, and everybody's so excited, but that doesn't translate into income.
Yeah.
And so that was a big risk. And, every month I think to myself, okay, how long are we're going to keep moving forward until, because my courses were still all in development. So I was you're in the hemorrhaging money stage, right?
Yeah.
But do you compromise on the quality of what you're doing, or do you keep plugging forward? And so for me, it was to keep plugging forward, because if I went and got myself another job so that I felt better about the risk, then I wouldn't have time to do the things that I needed to do to make it successful, right? So
Yeah. So what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
sometimes you have to slow down to speed up.
There you go.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get caught in the tizzy
Yeah.
and to try to be a perfectionist and to be like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And then you don't do any of them well.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just need to like pause, regroup, one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So let's
yeah.
say this. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into an 18-year-old version of you. You can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated over time. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Keep walking through the world with no fear,
Yeah.
because the younger version of like I now feel like I felt when I was 25.
Okay.
So and I think what happened is it's really easy to let the world make you smaller because because of fear. And so now I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I feel like I have the potential of a 25-year-old now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so don't let fear stop you from being yourself and from moving forward with what it is that you want.
So when you look at your life and everything that you've done and evolved into, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Oh, my life. I mean, yeah, I would say my children, but the truth is I'm living with adult children right now. So that is a little bit of a balance. So I'm not sure that today I would say that.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I've left every role that I've had and moved forward, I've left something behind because I'm kind of the organizer and the trainer. So, if you put in a brand new CRM with inventory, I'm the one that's gonna figure out the workflows and document the stuff so that it can be carried on. And so every time I've kind of come into a role, my goal has been to leave it so that somebody else can always perform that work and perform it better and to be more efficient. So my hope is that they're still using some of those systems that I put in place.
Yeah.
The really, really simple ones, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I would say that, just
Okay.
just leaving a little piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, colleagues, clients, everyone that learns from you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
So yeah, I'm still working on that. My standard line is I do a really good impression of somebody who has their shit together. And so I think what I'm trying to do is actually kind of put it together, but be graceful with myself. I'm my own worst critic. And so I'm trying to focus in on it being about the process and not necessarily the result. So yeah, I mean I'm a big personality, right? Like I bring a lot to the table. I can be loud, I can be um, lots of things, but I definitely think that there's I'm still working on that little girl inside that's in the back of my head.
Yeah, for sure. So if anyone wants to look into what you're doing, the courses, any of the good work in your world, where's the best place to go?
So everything is linked through our website, jigsavvy.com. We actually have a store so you can run through. We've got a whole bunch of courses that are in pre-launch right now. So anything that's pre-launch you can get for $10. And it'll be coming out in the next few weeks. And so any of our mini courses are only $49 once they launch. Once the I like to leave them in pre-launch, even though they're live, because I like to finesse them and make sure that they're perfect. But jigsavvy.com is the place to go and find out more about us.
Okay, excellent. Erika, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
It was great. Thank you.